In this video, we'll be going over the fundamentals of the Juicy Flick, made famous by world-renowned pilot Johnny FPV. We'll look at the science behind it, how you can improve your Juicy Flicks, and how you can practice it in the Liftoff FPV Simulator. Now before we get started, let's give a big shout out to Get FPV for making this video possible. Cheers, Get FPV. Alright, so let's talk about Juicy Flicks. I'm sure many of you have possibly tried this before, but there are many aspects to a Juicy Flick that makes it look juicy and flicky. There are also different exits out of a Juicy Flick to help with your flow, and we'll cover a few of these too. To pull off a successful Juicy Flick, it helps to develop some muscle memory first before attempting this trick, as a lot of it will come down to pilot skill and how well you can manage your flicks and rolls. So before actually breaking down the Juicy Flick, let's look at some tricks you need to be able to do to help with your muscle memory and make Juicy Flicks a lot easier. I would recommend practicing these with your actual quad, as your rates and feel of the quad on the simulator will be quite different. The first and most crucial warm-up trick to master is a half front flip. You want to be able to consistently flip your quad forward and catch it perfectly upside down again. To practice these, simply fly a good height off the ground, keep your quad level, find a target center of your screen, punch the throttle so you gain upwards momentum, and then cut the throttle back and initiate the flip. Make sure to try and catch it upside down with the horizon in the center of your screen again. The amount of stick input will be dependent on your rates, expo and camera angle, so each quad may be a bit different. But for the quad that you are flying, try and develop muscle memory to consistently catch your quad upside down. Once upside down, you can do another half flip to catch it right side up again and start the exercise over. Keep doing this until you get the muscle memory sorted for half flips. Now the second exercise would be a slow roll whilst maintaining an object in the middle of your screen by splitting your yaw and roll input. This is an important concept to understand because you normally do a Juicy Flick over an object and try to keep it center through the whole flick. If you didn't split the sticks in a roll and simply rolled out, your camera won't be facing the object through the roll due to the camera angle. However, if you apply yaw in the opposite direction that you are rolling, your quad will keep pointing to the object nicely in the middle of the screen. This is crucial to a smooth and flowy Juicy Flick. So for this exercise, you will do exactly what I'm doing on screen here. The important thing to take into consideration is that I'm doing a slow roll either way with the throttle cut back, splitting the roll and yaw inputs to ensure that a single object is staying in the center of the screen as best as I can keep it. Now once you can do these two exercises well, it's time to move on to the Juicy Flick. Since Juicy Flicks are mostly a freestyle trick, I've only set up a single flag on a big open field to give me enough space to practice this trick safely. Feel free to find a tree or something similar to practice this too. So before we get started, let's break the Juicy Flick up into 4 parts. We'll look at the approach, the flick, the roll, and the exit. The approach is the attitude and angle at which you approach the object which you want to Juicy Flick, and the flick is the actual initiation of the trick. The roll is the juicy part where you roll out nicely, and the exit is the next line you take to flow into the next trick. The great thing about breaking the Juicy Flick up into these 4 sections is that there are specific points to take into consideration for every part of the trick that will make it more juicy and easier to pull off. So let's look at each of these 4 sections more in depth. For the approach, it's important to try and be level with the ground and not roll to either side. If you are rolled to either side, you can still pull off a Juicy Flick, however, you may need to add some additional input during the flick to make it seem more juicy and smooth, since a level flick has the biggest visual impact on the trick. Another thing to take into consideration is the height off the ground, the object you want to flick. If you're close to the ground, you may want to punch the quad during the approach to generate some upwards momentum, since during the flick, you will cut the throttle completely and will fall back down pretty quick. Now as we are moving towards the object in a level attitude and we initiate a small punch to build upwards momentum, we want to do our best to immediately cut back on the throttle and start the flick, trying to keep the object in the center of our screen as we are moving over it. If we're flying slower, the flick will be slower, and if we're flying faster, the flick will be faster. But the goal here is to try and keep the object in the center of the screen as we do a half forward flip while we're flying over it. Now remember, as you are doing this, you are now upside down and at 0 throttle. You'll be floating over this object upside down pretty fast, and start to fall to the ground. So before you hit the ground, you want to start rolling out to get your quad level again and catch it. The transition from the flick into the roll will be pretty seamless, but it will happen as soon as you have the object center of your screen whilst upside down. Naturally, you'll likely have a preferred direction to roll out to, but it's important to practice this rolling out both ways, as sometimes your approach and general flow into a juicy flick will visually lend itself to roll out in a specific direction rather than the other to maintain your freestyle flow. So for this reason, definitely practice this trick rolling out both ways. As mentioned earlier before too, it's important to split your roll and yaw sticks to ensure that throughout the roll, the object you juicy flicked over stays center of the screen. Once you're at least halfway around in your roll, you can slowly start adding throttle again to catch yourself out of the trick. So as you are starting to level out through the juicy flick, you can now exit the trick and continue on with your flow. As you are leveling out the quad again, remember that the momentum is carrying you backwards, and during that time you need to be aware of your surroundings so you don't fly into anything backwards. There are many exit flows you can do to make the trick look smooth, but I'll just touch on two of the most common ones. The first exit flow could be to yaw your quad around in the direction that you're rolling to keep your momentum going forward. If you roll to the right, then keep your roll engaged a little bit longer and start yawing around. The same goes for rolls to the left. This is a pretty smooth and flowy exit, as it allows you to keep your juicy flick momentum going in the same direction. Another exit flow could be to do another juicy flick back over the object, basically doubling up on it and reversing the entire maneuver you just did. And that's it. You've completed your first juicy flick. Proximity to the ground is likely going to be the biggest crash factor here. So definitely start off juicy flicking objects that are a bit higher instead, and then slowly make your way lower to the ground. Now as always, I highly recommend that you take the time to practice this trick on the Liftoff FPV Simulator. There are no specific tracks to download for this, as there are many different types of obstacles that you can juicy flick, so just go onto FreeFly and start playing around with it. As you get more comfortable with normal juicy flicks, you can start adding some proximity combinations to this. I specifically enjoy juicy flicking out of a window. I will also be hosting a live stream on the Get FPV YouTube channel where I go over juicy flicks in a lot more detail, answer any questions you may have, and also fly with you, the community, at the same time. If you are interested in joining this live stream, check out the Get FPV Facebook group or subscribe to the Get FPV newsletter to get the details on this. If you are watching this a week after this video is uploaded, then you can find the recording of this live stream on the Get FPV YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.